Right, let's just get straight into this. So, firstly, I am an absolute geek, nerd, whatever you want to call it, and I love researching things like EPO, drug taking in sports. I find it fascinating. I do not believe the sport of triathlon is clean. I've done lots of other videos on this in the past. Go and take a look at them if you wish. But I think there are so many fundamental flaws with Collin Chartier's story, which either implicate other people, aka the whole likes of Mick Eden, or he's completely just lying about his timescale, which then means obviously he lied at the PTO Championships. Neither one of these is good for him, aka why he's lying, but this is just so transparent. I'm just going to try and just expose that as efficiently and as easily as possible so that people understand. Anyway, without further ado, let's just get into this. So I've got a whole list of things here that I'm just going to run through, so if I'm looking down, sorry for that in advance. Firstly, the first one I want to touch on is you cannot do this on your own unless you either want a death wish or you're just goddamn stupid. So there are so many downsides to EPO. You've got blood clots, you've got heart failure, you've got heart attack. I mean, the list goes on. You need to make sure that you're injecting the right amount. And on top of that, if you're microdosing, it becomes even more complicated. Most people would not feel comfortable just taking their own blood, let alone doing blood transfusions with EPO in a way that they're not going to get caught. It's simply fucking impossible. If you speak to a doctor about this, they're going to say the health implications and the risks are ridiculously high. There is a very high chance of something going wrong. I don't believe Collin Chartier is dumb enough to put his whole life at risk to try and microdose or just inject EPO. Secondly, where did he get this from? You can't just walk into your local GP, all right, doc, can I have some EPO? It doesn't work like this. He has to be getting it from somewhere that is not the doctor's. And quite frankly, would he risk just getting it randomly off a website? So I've just done some research. Yes, in about 5 minutes, I found how to administer EPO and where I can get EPO from. Does that mean I'm going to do it? Absolutely not. You can find out how to give a pregnant lady a cesarean. Does that mean I'm going to go and do that? No, absolutely not, because I'd probably give her an infection, I'd probably kill her and the baby, and it's just like, that is not my job. And that is the same thing with Collin Chartier here. He's not a doctor, he's not a GP, he has got no medical background or any practice in medicine. So what makes him think he can do this on his own? Quite frankly, he doesn't, and that's why I think, firstly, he hasn't been doing this himself. But let's just assume here that Collin Chartier had been implementing this himself, he'd been microdosing it, he'd been doing everything, he not even said he's been microdosing it, but let's just say he's been doing what he's been doing all on his own with no support, then that means that has to be a lie, because there's two reasons for this. Firstly, he's been coached by Mick Eden. Mick Eden is not stupid. He has coached many other athletes, and they're using a high amount of technology within their training period. If from 1 month to the next, Collin Chartier's training goes like this to this, Mick Eden is either extremely oblivious to the fact that he would be on EPO, or he knows that he would be on EPO, because you can't just look at someone's training plan and they just go from one point to there straight away. They're doing lactate testing the whole time. Now, obviously, the drug's not going to come up on the lactate test. What lactate testing does is says, right, you're working at this effort/intensity. It's your body's response to that at this given pace. So if you're taking EPO, you'd assume that you're going faster, harder, you're pushing more power for that same given sort of number that's coming up. AKA, then when Mick Eden looks at Collin Chartier's training, he's going, wow, okay, so either you've had lots of training off, which he claims he has done, but you're still fucking pushing ridiculously high power and run numbers, or alternatively, he's not had time off and he's just jumped like that. Either way does not look good for Mick Eden, and in my opinion, it's guilty by association if that's the case. And it's Collin Chartier's job to sort of free him of that guilt by association by telling everybody the truth, which he isn't doing, which is making this whole cloud go over Mick Eden and all the other people that he coaches, because it is guilt by association, and I feel sorry for them because the chances are they weren't involved. But because Collin Chartier isn't saying, this is how I did it, this is who I did it with, because quite frankly, no one believes he did it on his own. It's like me saying, oh yeah, I just walked up Mount Everest, didn't have a Sherpa there, just did it myself, and then claiming that I did it. It's bullshit. It really, really is. So he has to free these names up, otherwise they are going to get dragged down in the dirt with him. Or vice versa, those guys have to try and free themselves up, which I feel sorry for them if they do. The second thing is, if they didn't know, well then Collin Chartier must have been on EPO the whole time. Because in my personal opinion, either Mick Eden knows because he's a good fucking coach, or Collin Chartier's been on EPO the whole time, which therefore means that Mick Eden didn't know, and Collin Chartier's just been sort of microdosing this throughout the time he's been with Mick Eden, which isn't actually that long a time, so it does make sense, and that's that, which means he would have been on EPO for the PTO Dallas Championships, therefore the £100,000 would have been, quite frankly, fraud. And I think that's why he's changing that time period. But that makes things look 10 times worse, because I think that shines even more of a dark, musty colour over Mick Eden. Personal opinion, it just does. Logically, it puts them in the shit. It's just as simple as it gets. The third thing is, he claims that he just did a quick Google search and was like, yes, I'm going to start taking this. This is not how it goes. You don't just one day wake up and go, I'm going to take EPO. This is something you think about probably for a long period of time. And if you are going to do it, the chances are you don't just do a huge dose straight away. If I was going to be doing it, I definitely wouldn't just be going, okay, I'm going to give myself a full dose of EPO here. I would be doing such a smallest amount to begin with, just to make sure that I wasn't going to try and kill myself or that I wasn't doing something completely wrong. And if something did go wrong, the chance of something catastrophic failure would be far less. Just me on that. That is just me. But this is what I'm trying to say here. In Collin Chartier's interview, which I've probably listened to about 10 times, he is just creating his own loopholes. Literally, the first thing he goes to say is, I believe that the top guys in this sport are doping. And then he goes on to say that the Norwegians aren't doping. He's literally just making things a million times worse for himself because he's saying one thing, then contradicting it, then saying one thing, then contradicting it. He needs to just say what's happening. Otherwise, I genuinely believe that other pro athletes and other amateurs are going to absolutely not believe that certain athletes aren't doping. And I believe that that's completely valid because it's guilt through association. People can go, oh, you can't assume this, you can't assume that. But quite frankly, humans fucking assume. That's how we're built. You can say you don't do it, but you do. Deep down, you do. And I think it's going to shine a real dark light on those guys if he doesn't free them up. It just will. Let me know what you think on this. If you think what I've just waffled on about is not true, is true, put it down in the comments. And yeah, let's have a bit of a debate.